Thank you to PayDirt. I think it's a great conference, and we've attended a few of these over the years. And today I'm just going to give you a bit of an update on Ravensthorpe, where we are, and our role in the battery market. So, as said, BHP built Ravensthorpe in 2008. A bit of a troubled start, as you know, and it was acquired by First Quantum in 2010. We underwent a fair bit of rework on the front end of that plant to get that to work, but the actual main core processing plant actually operated well. We restarted that and ran it quite well through to about 2016, when we entered a care and maintenance period when the nickel price was quite low. We restarted that in 2019 and have been steadily ramping up that production coming out of the care and maintenance. And it's really forming quite a key asset in the First Quantum portfolio, whilst most of you know us as a sort of a copper miner, but the nickel and the copper go hand in hand as part of the electrification in the industry. Our target is to ramp up to 27 to 30,000 tonnes per annum of nickel in the MHP, as well as about 900 to 1,000 tonnes per annum of cobalt in there. In terms of where it fits into the market, it's actually, the market was going very well, as you saw in some of the earlier charts into 2022. Good, strong LME price, really good payables on the nickel in the MHP. And then came March. So we had the Ukraine invasion, the short positioning on the LME, and COVID lockdowns through China, and suddenly the nickel price dropped and the payables plummeted. So it's been a bit of a volatile period. My view personally, I think there's everyone's got different views, but my view is it's a short term, probably a year and a half volatility. And what we're seeing is the fundamentals, especially in that battery sector, of that 30 to 40% year-on-year growth. That demand will catch up, especially to that new supply that's come on in Indonesia. So we feel that the whole process is to be focused now at Ravensthorpe on getting a reliable and stronger operation down there and getting ourselves there in position to support the battery, as well as actually support the community down in the Great Southern. To that end, we invested about $140 million in the Shoemaker Levee deposit. We developed that mine in 2021. It came online. It's about 10 kilometres away from the main plant. It had a new pit, mining infrastructure, crusher, and a 10-kilometre overland conveyor across the Southwest Highway. And what that's done now is added about 25 years plus to the life of mine for Ravensthorpe, and really reinforces our commitment to the nickel industry and also to the Esperance and Albany region down there. Our customers are primarily the battery market manufacturers, right? When we started up the restart, they were primarily Chinese battery manufacturers. And what we've seen is over the last 1 to 2 years, a transition where we've got a diversification of these customers to include the Korean, Indian, Australian, and now in strong talks with Japan, Europe, and North America. And what we're starting to see is that battery manufacturers and even car manufacturers are reaching further down and creating strategic relationships with the miners to support their supply chain. And that's, from our perspective, was highlighted with the POSCO deal we did last year. They acquired 30% equity in Ravensthorpe. And the main strategy from their perspective was they secured 7,500 tonnes of nickel in the MHP per annum as an offtake to feed into their nickel sulfate plant that they're currently building in Korea, which will come online and start taking our product in 2024. So what we've seen is currently a lot of our customer relationships or agreements are an annualised agreement, very commodity transaction based, linked to the LME price and a payability. And we're seeing that we're going to see more and more of our sales agreements becoming more of longer term strategic type agreements, which is around de-risking their supply chain and less around that commodity side of things. At the same time, we're also seeing very strong interest from our customers in the ESG credentials of the miners. And I think that's where it's going to start to change as we move forward. So our role now as miners is how do we promote ESG and how do we leverage that? Because at the moment, there's not a lot of value placed. There's a lot of hype, but not value placed on that in the industry. And if you look at it from a Ravensthorpe perspective, we're located in WA. It's a pretty mature mining area, strong mining principle, low risk jurisdiction, good social and political support here. And this helps us in the whole selling ourselves in terms of the lower risk. If you compare that to the other industries or regions in the HPAL and leaching area, that we measure up quite well when you compare us on ESG factors. Sources of power generation, tailings management, regulatory issues, social aspects. So our opportunity now is that we've got a mature nickel industry in the leaching side here in Australia, and how do we leverage that and demonstrate our reliable and proven technology compared to some of the new emerging regions. In terms of First Quantum, we are committed to lowering our greenhouse gases. And when you look at that in context of Ravensthorpe, we're quite a low CO2 emitter per tonne of nickel. We're in the bottom quartile from a Scope 1 emissions perspective and the bottom third from a Scope 1, 2 and 3. And the main contributor for us from a CO2 emission is actually the acid consumption in the ore as part of the mineral processing, and then the subsequent neutralisation of that with a calcium carbonate and lime. That probably generates 60 to 70% of our CO2 emissions in our process. The other benefits from an ESG perspective for Ravensthorpe is our power is a byproduct of our acid generation, and we supplement that with diesel as required. But we operate in an island, so we're not sitting on the state grid. We have a heavy use of conveyors and electric equipment. Our process water is primarily seawater. We have a small amount of desalination required in critical areas, and our water is fully self-contained on the site. There's no deposition off-site. Our tailings is also deposited on land and on site and managed within we've got a rigorous framework for tailings management within FQM. Obviously, good regulation for labour and social areas and good, strong community relations here in WA. All of that puts us in a good position ESG-wise on the HPAL side of things. But we still must do better. And we're challenging ourselves. We're currently studying a wind farm. We're looking at putting around 15 to 20 megawatt wind farm in place down at Ravensthorpe. And for anyone who's been down there knows that'll generate well. And the opportunity there is that we're seeing our ores are starting to consume less acid and we're starting to burn more diesel in the power generation side. And with the acid plant, we have the ability to turn it up, turn it down, act almost as a battery to counter the variability in wind generation. What we're also looking at doing is pursuing longer-term relationships with our customers, trying to focus on that EV supply chain. We're looking at options for custom feed arrangements, so supplemental feed from the nickel concentrate with some of the new operations coming onto play in WA, as well as downstream opportunities for like a nickel sulfate, whether that be here in WA or in overseas opportunities. So really our key objective is to focus on getting Ravensthorpe to be a stable, reliable, long-term nickel producer and feeding into the battery market and being a good social operator down in the Ravensthorpe area. Thank you.